What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Glad's Horror Channel tonight, the best horror channel here on YouTube. And tonight, we're going to talk about remakes. So, there are so many horror movie remakes, and there's so many times we may say remakes. There's never a good remake, but I am here to offer you a difference here. That there are not only some good horror movie remakes, but some great ones. And today, we're going to talk about the top 10 horror movie remakes of all time. Let's get started. Before we get started, what makes for a good horror remake? To me, if a movie has been around for some time and it feels dated when you watch it, it just feels like it's hard to put yourself into the movie and really sink your teeth into it, it's time for a remake. Some movies, like for instance, Nosferatu was remade in '79. The first one was made in 1922 or 1921, so it's very hard to put yours today's self into 1921. Back in '79, it needed a fresh coat of paint, and it was a perfect time for it. So, what makes it good? It's when you take the story and don't try to change anything off of it. If you decide to remake a movie, it's because you already were attached to the movie anyway. So it was good for you, good to you for some reason. So keep it that way. Keep it that way. If there's a hole in the story, then you can fill that hole in your remake. But generally, keep it how it was. Ramp up the violence. Ramp up the technology today. Ramp up those things. Don't so much mess with the story. We've seen some directors in the past go with the actual messing with the story when doing a remake, and it just doesn't come across the same way. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, Last House on the Left. A perfect example of what I just said. If you watch the original Last House on the Left today, it is a little bit hard to watch. It's getting to the point now, or it's been to the point for some time now, that it's harder and harder to put yourself in that time frame and enjoy it just as a movie to watch if you feel like watching a horror movie. You have to be in a certain mindset and a certain level of horror fandom to want to really dig into the older movie. For me, I will only really watch the original if I'm feeling nostalgic. If I'm deciding to watch Last House on the Left, the remake is the one for me because it took everything good about the original and just ramped it up. The violence was there, the acting was there, the overall ferocity of the movie was elevated with this, and the emotion too, because it is an emotional movie in parts. You felt that emotion. So then when the violence ramped up, it felt even stronger. It was a very, very strong movie. That's my number 10. At number 9, another Wes Craven classic, The Hills Have Eyes. That's number 9 for me. Now, The Hills Have Eyes is a little bit different for me from that Last House on the Left. I will go back and watch the original. There is something about the charm of the Hills Have Eyes original that I just love. What I think was better in the original were the characters on both sides. Obviously on the villain side, the characters in the villain had more depth to them. The characters in the remake did not. But what the remake did was ramp up the violence and the insanity tenfold, and you did feel for the characters. And when the violence really started happening in the remake, it was balls to the wall. It was insane. So that's what it brought that the original didn't have. The original had the potential there. You could see the potential there. But when you look at it today, that the level of effect doesn't have the effect that it would have had back then to what somebody today. Whereas if you watch the Hills Have Eyes remake right now, that effect of that violence, that overall in your face intensity, that's there just as strongly as it ever was. For that reason, that's my number 9. Coming in at number 8, Amityville Horror. What did Amityville Horror remake do differently or better than the original? Honestly, Ryan Reynolds was a great introduction, and he was the main reason why this stood out. Him alongside the technology, alongside the acting, the things I've already mentioned before. But considering he was not really into, he'd been predominantly in a comedy role, to see him in this role, and the thing with the Amityville, with the main characters of Amityville, they go through ebbs and flows of feelings. He had to go almost in a Jack Torrance way from The Shining, from this great dad, happy-go-lucky, to slowly descending into madness. And the way that it came across was phenomenal. They had also mixed in some jump scares, more so than the original one did. So kind of the same way for me, like The Last House on the Left, if I'm going to pick an Amityville horror movie to watch, it's going to be the remake over the original. That's my number 8. Coming in number 7, Maniac. If you guys have not seen Maniac, after this video is over, find it and watch it. I saw the original or the remake before I saw the original, and for me, I was blown away, and it took me some time to go and watch the original. And when I did, I couldn't even finish it. I wanted to go right back to watch the remake again because of the things I said previously. With how it looks today, the ferocity of the remake is just insane. And the music, I told you guys in previous videos, I'm a huge score fan when it comes to music. The music in the remake of Maniac was another thing that set it apart from the original. Between the visuals, between the overall, like the lead character, just, you could feel his intensity. But he was also just socially awkward, which translated into an obsession, and the main character played it to a T. I can't say enough good things about this movie. Number 7 for me, Maniac. And number 6, Evil Dead. Now, I am not the biggest Evil Dead original fan. I'm not that big of a fan of the original. Here's why. It was way too campy for me. There was one scene, the scene with the cards in the window, I think is one of the scariest scenes and the best made scenes in all of horror cinema. Other than that, it feels very campy, it feels very cheesy. I don't have the same level of love for it that a lot of people do. What this one did was took all that stuff away. All of the cheesiness, all the campiness, all of the light-heartedness of the original, and just came and punched it hard with in-your-face violence, in-your-face gore, in-your-face everything was just ramped up and elevated to the nth degree. You felt like you were watching a movie called The Evil Dead, which evil and dead, they're two bad words. So combine them, you've got to see a presentation that matches that intensity. And I feel this remake definitely did that. So that's my number 6. So here we are, the top 5. We're getting into the heavy hitters now. So for my number 5, The Ring. Here's why The Ring. Number 1, it was an original J horror called Ringu. It is very, very hard for remakes of J horrors to come across well. One missed call faltered, pulse faltered, the eye faltered. There's a ton that they attempted to remake that just didn't come across well. If it wasn't for the success of The Ring, we wouldn't have seen any of those other remakes come out. This was perfectly executed. It kept the story strong. It introduced America to a different horror because that had never been seen before. The visuals that were shown, the way that the J horror movies are, they're very heavy. They're mainly with the ghost stories. They're very heavily on the ghost. I feel like they do the ghost better than any other area, better than any other type movie. And to see Americans take that same movie and remake it and make it stick alongside that. So what gives it number 5 for me is because of what it was up against. It's very hard to either equal or surpass it, and I feel it surpassed it. And I'm a huge fan of Ringu, but if I'm gonna choose, like I've been saying this whole video, if I'm gonna choose one or the other, I'm gonna pick The Ring over Ringu all the time. It's just a great. I'm not a big fan of jump scares, but they had jump scares at the right time. The tension was there, and you never really felt comfortable the entire movie. That's one thing I like about it too. So that's our number 5. So coming in number 4, 13 Ghosts. Of course, you guys knew it had to be on this list. There's a strong amount of people that want to see a TV show out of this movie, because the 13 ghosts, the ghosts themselves, all have backstories that deserve to be expounded upon. And I can tell you, I'd heard of the original one before the remake, but I didn't watch the original one until after the remake. And there's no comparison. There are some movies that will remind you of the remake and make you say, oh, well, I wish they would, or remind you of the original, make you say, oh, I wish they would have done something a little bit different. And there are some that just stand by themselves to where you don't even desire to look at the original. And that's what 13 Ghosts did. I can't think of a bad thing to say about this movie. 13 Ghosts is my number 4. All right, so we're in our top 3 now. Coming in at number 3, Dawn of the Dead. What did Dawn of the Dead elevate? A couple things. Number 1, you're taking a George A. Romero staple, a classic, and attempting to remake it. You know how many people would have come for this movie had it not come across well. George A. Romero is a beloved character, a beloved man, a beloved person here in America. So to take that movie, which some consider to be his best work, and remake it, they elevated the zombies. We had never seen fast-moving zombies up until this point. The idea they took the main villain and made it that much scarier. Because one thing is, you watch these zombie movies, you're like, okay, I can outrun these zombies, they're slow. You can't outrun those zombies. And the story was great. Now again, the modern technology, the acting, I feel like I'm saying the same things a lot, but these are the comparisons that you have to do when looking at remake to original. Something has to be elevated. In this case, it was the zombies. That's my number 3 for sure. At number 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the original is one of my favorite movies, 1974. It's near and dear to my heart, and I still watch it today. Here's why I watch it: for the same reason that The Hills Have Eyes. It has a level of charm to it, and it just feels gritty, it just feels dirty, it just feels violent, it just feels in your face. The remake is a little bit more polished, but it's elevated. Leatherface in this one seems a lot more ferocious. He seems a lot more intense, and it seems to be just there's just more depth to this. They changed the hitchhikers, but I think the change was needed. So what I said earlier, if you change something, does it work? When they changed it, it still worked. Expounding upon the family and the family's reach and how far in that town they're able to reach. They did that in the original somewhat, but to institute one of the family members into being the cop, it was just a whole different level of, no matter where we turn, we're not safe. And that's one of the main themes that was in the original. So if they didn't have that, or they did something different, this remake wouldn't have come across as strong. But they hit everything that was done well in the original and elevated it with the way it looks today. That's definitely my number 2. Before we get to our number 1, take a moment, look beneath this video, see that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button if you're new here. This way I do top 10 lists, I do horror movie reviews, I do a history of horror series that I'm doing monthly, and I take requests as well. So anything you want to see, if you're new here, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what more you want to see. How can I can improve these videos, because I'm doing this for you all, to share my love of horror with you. Without further ado, I'm pretty sure you all know what number 1 is. Number 1, The Thing. Kind of like I said about a couple of these movies before, The thing, the thing, not only is it one of the best movies, but one of the best horror movies ever made by itself. If it was able to remake, it's one of the best horror movies made ever. Number one. Number two, no one looks for the remake. Like, you kind of had to know, you kind of had to Google to find out that it was a remake because it's that good. And then I went back to watch the thing from Another World. It's not even close. It doesn't even feel like the same movie. It doesn't even feel like it's a remake of it. It feels like it's its own thing because it took the main premise, did away with everything else, and made the movie its own. What did it elevate? The special effects. There was no CGI. It was all practical. The tension, the setting being where it was, you just felt alienated. You felt paranoid. You felt like every feeling that movie wanted you to convey, or were trying to convey, was felt for anyone who watched it. That's definitely far and above the greatest horror movie remake ever made. Was I wrong? Was I right? You guys tell me in the comments. I'll see you guys next time.